A billionaire tech mogul returned home early to surprise his family, only to find his three young sons shivering outside in the December rain. What he uncovered behind the mansion's doors would test his soul, his past, and what it truly means to be a father. The Tesla stopped because the driver did, not because the GPS ended navigation or the storm let up, but because Marcus Blackwood saw something no man should ever have to see. Three boys huddled together against the base of a marble column, their faces red with cold, breath barely making mist in the frigid air. The rain had soaked through their designer clothes, their expensive sneakers waterlogged and muddy. But they weren't crying. Not one of them shed a tear. They just looked up at him like they'd been waiting for the world to end. And maybe it just did. Marcus hadn't meant to come back early. He'd left the Hamptons estate 5 days prior with the promise of returning in a week's time. Gone to close a merger deal in Silicon Valley and finalize contracts before the holidays hit too hard. He'd departed trusting that the woman he married 8 months ago would keep the home warm and the children safe. It was a second chance, or so he told himself, a woman to help carry the burden, a woman to maybe help the boys smile again. But now, as he stepped out of his car and ran the last few feet to his sons, all of that cracked wide open. Daniel. His voice broke on the oldest's name. The boy barely stirred, stiff, and tried to stand. Marcus fell to his knees on the wet stone, yanking off his designer gloves and feeling the ice in his boys' clothes, in their shoes, in their skin. Nathan, the middle one, shivered uncontrollably, his face pressed into Daniel's side. Little Ryan didn't even lift his head. Why are you out here?" Marcus asked, voice sharp with fear and something heavier beneath it. Daniel tried to speak, but his lips were split and blue. He glanced toward the mansion's front door, just 10 feet away, shut tight, the yellow flicker of firelight clearly visible through the stained glass panels. He started, then stopped. "She locked us out." Marcus's breath left him. It wasn't just the cold. It wasn't just the rain. It was the way Daniel said it, like it wasn't the first time. Like he didn't expect any different. Marcus scooped Ryan up, the smallest boy curling instinctively into his chest. Then he took Nathan under one arm and urged Daniel to follow. The mansion door wasn't locked when Marcus reached it. It didn't even creak as he opened it. Warmth immediate, the smell of expensive wine and wood polish, a fire roaring in the marble hearth, and in front of it, curled in a leather chair with a crystal glass in her hand, sat Victoria. She didn't even look surprised. "You're home early," she said flatly, her eyes not leaving the fire. Marcus didn't speak. Not at first. He moved gently, setting Ryan near the fireplace and stripping off the child's soaked jacket. He knelt, worked at Nathan's designer sneakers, tried to rub warmth back into numb toes. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, like stepping in without permission would get him punished. Marcus looked up. "How long?" Victoria sighed. "They were noisy. I told them to play outside. Didn't think you'd be back till Friday." "It's near dark," Marcus said, quiet and sharp. "There's a storm coming." "They have coats," she said with a shrug, sipping from her glass. "Don't see the harm in it. A little cold builds character." Marcus rose slowly. He wasn't a man prone to shouting. He didn't clench his fists or bark threats, but there was a heat in his chest now that made his voice low and dangerous. "They're children," he said. "My children. They're not mine," she snapped, eyes finally lifting. That was the moment something inside Marcus Blackwood changed. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized he'd married a stranger. A beautiful face with hands that never softened. A woman who could style her hair perfect and curl her mouth into sweetness when it suited her. But the mask had slipped now, and there was nothing sweet underneath. "You can pack," Marcus said evenly. Victoria blinked. "What? You heard me. You're throwing me out over this?" Marcus didn't answer. He turned instead, grabbed another blanket from the closet, and wrapped it around Daniel's thin shoulders, guiding the boy inside. The door closed behind them, sealing in warmth and tension. The night passed in silence, save for the crackle of the fire and the shifting of expensive bedding. As the boys slept, safe now inside the house that was meant to shelter them, Marcus sat awake most of that night, his back to the wall, eyes on the woman across the room who used to share his bed. She didn't speak again, didn't weep, didn't beg. And by morning, she was gone. The boys didn't ask where. Part of Marcus wanted to leave it at that, but something gnawed at him. The truth. Because when he asked Daniel again, quietly, privately, While the others were still asleep, he learned it hadn't been just one night in the cold. It had been many. When Marcus left on his business trips, she turned cruel. Meals skipped, chores doubled, punishments that didn't fit the offense. She said if we told you, she'd make sure you didn't come back next time, Daniel whispered, ashamed. Marcus closed his eyes. He remembered the bruises Daniel had once claimed were from skateboarding. The odd silence when he returned from trips, the way Nathan flinched when a voice was raised, and how little Ryan clung tighter every time Marcus left. He should have seen it. He should have known. And now all he could do was make it right. But the Hamptons was a small community, and news traveled quick, especially when a woman like Victoria didn't go quietly. She'd have gone to her brother, most likely, or to the country club president's wife, anyone who'd listen. And with Marcus's past, it wouldn't take much to twist things. That's when the first car showed up. Not police, not family. Hired. Marcus watched it come down the estate's private drive from the security room window. The man moved like someone who'd fought before. Moved like he knew Marcus's name. And he wasn't alone. Two more followed, lagging behind just enough to show they weren't worried. That was the real message. They were coming to take something or someone. Marcus turned from the window and walked back to where Daniel stood by the fireplace, holding Ryan's small hand. "Boys," Marcus said quietly, "I need you to listen to me." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scare them, but the look in his eyes was enough. Outside, cars had stopped. Voices murmured. Gravel crunched under expensive shoes. Someone pressed the doorbell. Not once, not asking. A long, insistent ring. The kind that didn't wait long for an answer. The bell came again, sharper this time. Not the way a neighbor might ring, not even like law enforcement. This was a kind of ring meant to announce control. A sound made by men who thought the door already belonged to them. Marcus didn't flinch. He just looked at that door like he was studying it, like he was remembering every scratch in the mahogany and every hinge squeak in case he never saw it again. "Get in the safe room," he told the boys. "Don't argue." Daniel looked like he wanted to, jaw tight, shoulders set, but he obeyed. He took Nathan's hand, guided Ryan with the other, and led them to the panic room Marcus had built behind the wine cellar. Reinforced steel walls, the kind you could stack furniture against to keep danger out. The boys would be safe for now. The third ring was followed by the sound of a fist hitting the door frame. Not hard enough to break it, just enough to say, "We're tired of waiting." Marcus opened it slow. 3 men. The one in front wore a tailored suit too fine for this kind of work. Black with silver cufflinks like he still thought he belonged in a Manhattan boardroom somewhere. The pistol at his hip was clean, polished, barely worn. He wasn't a man who used it much, but he wanted folks to think he did. Behind him, one man, tall and lean, with a scar that split his chin like a broken bottle, had kissed it once. The third had eyes too close together and fingers that kept twitching near his jacket like his nerves didn't know how to sleep. "Evening," said the man in front. "You Marcus Blackwood." Marcus didn't answer. "You are." The man continued, stepping forward like that confirmed it. "Heard a story about you once, back before you settled into this domestic life. Something about a corporate takeover in Chicago and 6 executives who didn't walk out of that boardroom." "Lot of stories out there," Marcus said. "Sure are," the man smiled. "Some of them even true." Silence stretched a beat too long. "You going to say why you're here?" Marcus asked finally, voice flat. The man tilted his head. "Oh, we're not here for trouble, Blackwood. Just came for the woman." Marcus's jaw tensed. "She's not here." "Now that's funny," the man said, chuckling as he looked back at his companions. "Because Victoria Sterling sure as hell drove into East Hampton last night, claiming her husband threw her out into the storm with no money, no car, and 3 traumatized boys to witness her suffering. Said you tried to have her killed. Said she barely escaped with her life. She lied. She locked them out. Let them freeze while she drank my wine and warmed her feet." The man didn't blink. "Maybe that's true. Maybe it ain't. Problem is, your name don't carry a lot of weight with family court judges. And her brother's one of the district attorney's golf partners. So guess who the system listens to?" Marcus glanced past him down the drive. "No badges, no officials, just these 3. She sent you to negotiate. She sent us to collect." Marcus stepped out onto the marble steps, closing the mansion door behind him with quiet finality. "You came a long way," he said. "That we did. And you expect me to hand her back over. We expect you to hand the boys over." Marcus didn't answer. "You don't," the man said, And next time, it'll be child services themselves up here with a signed court order. The scarred one shifted beside him, hand resting casual-like near his holster. Victoria's saying you ain't fit to raise them. Saying she's the only one ever fed them proper. Says you've been abusing them, scaring them into obedience. Says she's taking them to her sister's penthouse near Chicago where they'll be safe. Marcus didn't laugh, didn't spit, didn't even blink. He just said, "You ever seen a boy with hypothermia, with fingers gone numb because someone loved him enough to throw him into a winter storm?" The men didn't answer. "I've seen it," Marcus said. "I held a boy's hand in mine once and couldn't feel anything through the skin. When I checked his pulse, I barely found one." He stepped off the marble steps now, down to the wet gravel where their luxury cars shifted nervously in the wind. "You tell her she can have the house if she wants it, the cars, the bank accounts, even the staff if she finds them around, but the boys." His voice dropped to something raw. "She don't get them." The man's smile faded. "That ain't your call." "It is," Marcus said. "If you want to walk away with your bones still where God put them." The twitchy one moved first. His hand shot toward his jacket. But Marcus had been waiting. Not for a fight, for a mistake. One gunshot cracked across the estate. Just one. And the twitchy one dropped, screaming and clutching his thigh. Marcus didn't go for a kill, just a warning, just a lesson. The other two froze. Marcus raised his gun slow and steady, pointing it at the man with the fine suit. "You drive back to town and tell Victoria this is the last she'll ever see of this place. You tell the DA too. If he wants to come himself, he's welcome. But I won't be handing over the only good thing I've got left in this life." The man didn't speak. He just nodded once, sharp and short, and turned. The scarred one bent to help the bleeding man to his feet, and together the three of them limped away, disappearing into the night and rain. Marcus didn't lower the gun until the sound of engines faded. Only then did he breathe again. Back inside, the boys hadn't moved. Daniel stood by the security monitor with wide eyes. Nathan held Ryan close. They'd heard it all. Marcus set the gun aside. "They're gone," he said, "for now." No one said a word. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat in the dark near the fireplace while the boys curled under silk quilts. He thought of every mistake that brought them here. Of the day he buried their mother. Of the quiet years that followed. Of Victoria's smile when he first saw her at a charity gala. How it lit something up in him that he'd thought was dead. Hope. He remembered hope. And how fast it turned to ash. In the morning, the wind came from the west, warm, just enough to melt the ice at the windows. The boys rose early, uneasy. Marcus tried to act normal, checking emails, reviewing security footage, but none of them missed how he kept checking the surveillance monitors. At midday, a message arrived, sent to his private email. No sender, no signature, just words on a screen left like a warning. Marcus opened it with care. "You have 3 days to return what's mine. I'll come with court orders next time, and you'll lose more than just your fortune." It wasn't signed. Didn't need to be. Victoria had started something she couldn't finish alone. Marcus knew what came next. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Marcus Blackwood read the message twice before deleting it and clearing his cache. He didn't save it. Not yet. He wanted to remember it, though. Maybe show it to the lawyers if it came to that. But he knew what it meant. Victoria had gone to the courts or to the bank, or worse, to that corrupt judge she'd once mentioned in passing, the one who helped people get what they deserved. The boys were quieter now, watching him with wide, unspoken questions in their eyes. Marcus didn't answer any of them. He couldn't, not with words. Instead, he kept them busy organizing the game room, helping him check the security system where the cameras had gone offline, teaching Nathan how to monitor the estate's perimeter on the tablet, showing Daniel how to read the weather alerts, the ones that rolled in fast and left harder storms behind. But even with activities and gourmet meals and a warm fire, there was something tight in the air, something unspoken, like a predator circling beyond the security lights. That night, after the boys had finally gone to sleep, Marcus sat at his mahogany desk with a cup of bitter espresso and stared into the flames. He didn't want to run. He'd built this empire himself, coded the first programs with his own hands, raised those boys from newborns to young men in the making. He had buried his wife not 10 feet from the rose garden behind the pool house, where spring flowers still came up like her spirit refused to leave. But he also wasn't stupid. Men like the district attorney didn't come calling with questions. They came calling with warrants and badges, and the kind of men who like to knock things over just to see them fall. If Victoria really had gotten something signed, any legal paper, any lie dressed up official, then Marcus's choices were about to get real small. He was thinking about this when he heard it. Not a doorbell this time, a sound behind the house. Not close, not urgent, just wrong. He stood slowly, his chair barely creaking, reached for the pistol by the safe, not because he wanted trouble, but because trouble doesn't ask what you want. He slipped outside, Italian leather shoes crunching softly over the wet gravel. The wind had stilled. No moon, just the faint glow of security lights and the colder silence that follows after a storm clears. At the edge of the pool house, he paused. Another sound. A scrape. Not metal, not wood. Something breathing. He raised the pistol. "Who's there?" he said low. No answer. He moved fast, circling around the side, and saw her. Not Victoria. A girl barely older than Daniel, thin, wrapped in what looked like a hospital blanket, barefoot, lips blue. She didn't flinch when she saw him. Didn't run. Just stared. Marcus lowered the pistol. "You lost?" She shook her head. "I'm hiding." "From who?" She looked past him toward the main road, then back again. "From the men who came yesterday." Marcus's stomach dropped. "You saw them?" She nodded. "They passed my foster home south of here. They said some man took 3 boys hostage. They said he was dangerous." Her voice wavered on the word dangerous. Marcus stepped forward. "And what made you come here?" She hesitated. "Because I know lies when I hear them." He looked at her. Really looked. She had bruises up one arm, old ones. Her eyes were sharp, though smart. The kind that had seen too much and weren't surprised anymore. "What's name?" he asked. "Emma," she said. "You with anyone?" "No," she said, then corrected herself. "Not anymore." Marcus didn't ask what that meant. He just took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. Inside, he sat her by the fireplace and poured her a glass of water. Daniel stirred, rubbing his eyes and looking toward the stranger. "She okay?" he whispered. "She's cold, that's all." Daniel didn't ask more. He just got up, fetched a blanket from the linen closet, and handed it over without a word. Emma watched him with quiet eyes. "You're one of the boys they want," she said. Daniel stiffened. "We didn't do nothing." "I know," she said. Ryan mumbled in his sleep. Nathan rolled over. The mansion was still for a while. No one spoke. Then Emma asked, "What are you going to do when they come back?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, walked to the wall safe under the stairs, and opened it. Inside were old things, a watch he hadn't worn in years, documents sealed and half buried under investment papers, and a Glock that hadn't seen daylight since his wife died. He took the gun out and set it on the coffee table. Then he looked at Emma. "I reckon I'm going to remind them who they're dealing with." The next day passed strange. Emma barely spoke, but she didn't try to leave. She watched everything. How Marcus prepared breakfast. How Marcus loaded ammunition. How the boys took turns monitoring the security feeds from the control room. She watched the sky too, as if expecting it to break open again. By afternoon, Daniel approached Marcus on the terrace. "Dad," he said, voice low. "Are we going to have to fight?" Marcus didn't answer straight. He looked at his son, saw the same tight line in his jaw he used to see in the mirror when he was 12. "I'm going to try not to," Marcus said. "But I won't let anyone take you. Not while I'm breathing." Daniel nodded once. "Good." Later that night, Marcus took Emma aside. "You see the men again or hear anything, you tell me." She nodded. "They'll come. Victoria's not done." He studied her a moment. "Why'd you come here?" Emma swallowed. "Because you didn't call the police on me." Marcus blinked. She continued. "Most folks would have sent me off. Said I was trouble. Said I didn't belong." "You do now," he said. And he meant it. They were a strange family now. Boys still learning how to trust, a girl who didn't believe in safety, and a man trying to rebuild everything that kept being torn down. But the mansion was warm. And that night, no one slept on the floor. Not even Emma. At dawn, the security alarm chimed. They didn't have visitors the day before. Marcus bolted upright. A shadow moved behind the smart glass. Not at the door, at the window. Another sound. Not the doorbell this time. Glass. The sharp tap of a gun barrel. And a voice. "Time's up, Blackwood." The knock on the glass was deliberate. Not just a warning, it was a promise. Marcus didn't move at first. He stayed crouched near the fireplace, pistol in hand, listening for footsteps. A second tap followed, slower this time. A long scrape of metal across the bulletproof glass. Then silence. Nathan stirred, blinking awake. Emma put a hand on his shoulder and shook her head. The boy froze, eyes wide, not from confusion, but recognition. They all felt it, the shift in the air, the quiet before something breaks. Marcus crept to the window on the far wall, avoiding the one they'd knocked on. He parted the automated blinds with the remote and peeked out. 3 vehicles again, but not the same men. One of them was dressed in black tactical gear, tall behind the wheel, motionless. His SUV didn't shift in the breeze. His cap sat low over his eyes, and even from a distance, Marcus could feel the chill that came off him. The kind of man who didn't waste time with bluffs. Beside him, 2 younger operatives. One kept glancing around, nerves betraying him. The other looked half asleep, slouched in his seat like the cold didn't even reach him. No police badges, no court papers, no official talk. These weren't men sent to negotiate. These were men sent to end things. Marcus turned back to Daniel. Get the boys in the safe room. Same as before. Daniel nodded and moved without hesitation, scooping up Ryan and dragging Nathan behind. Emma stayed by the fireplace, arms crossed over her thin frame. She hadn't said a word, but her eyes were steel. They're not from the courts, she whispered. No, Marcus said. They're not. He stepped to the door and opened it. Not wide, just enough to see the man in black raise his chin. Marcus Blackwood? The man asked. You're looking at him. The man shifted in his seat. Name's Kane. You and I got a situation. Marcus stepped out onto the marble steps, gun resting loose in his right hand. He didn't raise it. Not yet. You hear from Victoria? Kane's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. I'm here to see justice done. My client says you kidnapped 3 children. Says you're unstable, dangerous. And she hired you to fix that. Paid up front. Marcus chuckled once, low and humorless. Then I'm guessing talking's a waste of time. Kane didn't answer right away. He glanced at the house, then back at Marcus. Used to be, Kane said, when a man was out of line, the community dealt with it. But folks these days, they got money. They get lawyers, judges, private contractors. He stepped out of the SUV slow, careful. The other 2 stayed in their vehicles. You can hand them over, Blackwood. No fuss. I ain't going to shoot a man with his hands up. I ain't putting my hands up, Marcus said. Kane sighed. Didn't think you would. Then everything happened fast. The nervous operative on the left side went for his rifle. Marcus dropped to one knee and fired once. The shot clipped the edge of the door, sent the rifle flying. The SUV lurched, spun, and the operative hit the pavement hard, groaning. Kane didn't blink. He drew, but not toward Marcus. He aimed at the window, at the house. Marcus fired again, hitting Kane in the shoulder. The man stumbled back, blood soaking into the black tactical vest. He didn't scream, just stared at Marcus with surprise and respect. You're better than they said, Kane muttered, teeth clenched. Marcus didn't speak. The last operative turned his vehicle and bolted. Marcus didn't fire after him. Kane dropped to one knee, gripping his wound. You going to finish it? He asked, looking up. Marcus stepped closer. You shoot at my house, my children. What do you think I ought to do? Kane spat blood onto the marble. I think you already did it. He passed out. Marcus stood over him, chest heaving. The gravel was quiet again. The operative that fled would reach East Hampton by dusk, and when he did, Victoria would spin a new story. They'd say Marcus was a murderer now, that he opened fire on a peaceful escort, that the boys were being held hostage by a madman. He had to move. Back inside, Daniel peeked from the safe room door. Is it over? Marcus shook his head. Not yet. He dragged Kane's body into the garage, not dead, just unconscious, and zip-tied him to a support beam. Checked the shoulder. The bullet had gone clean through. He'd live. That night, they didn't turn on the main lights. Emma helped Marcus board up the damaged window. Nathan slept curled into Ryan's side like a shadow. Daniel stayed awake, sitting by the security monitor with a kitchen knife in his lap, watching, learning. Marcus sat across from him. He didn't say a word, but the boy didn't need it. By morning, Kane stirred. Marcus offered him water. The man drank it without speaking. You hired or loyal? Marcus asked. Kane spat again. Aren't we all hired when it comes down to it? Tell me what she promised. She promised I'd never have to work again. You believe her? Kane chuckled. No, but I believe the cryptocurrency she transferred me. Thought you were some soft tech exec who'd get flustered. Maybe cry. Maybe run. Marcus stared. She told you I'd run. She said you were weak now. Soft. Said grief had made you pathetic. Marcus sat back. She knows better. She does now, Kane said. Later that afternoon, Emma approached the terrace where Marcus was reviewing security footage on his laptop. She's not going to stop, the girl said. No, Marcus agreed. She's going to say you're violent, that you attacked her men, that you kept me, too. He nodded. I can leave, she offered, if it helps. You're not a burden. I am a witness. Marcus looked up. You're a child. Emma shook her head. Not anymore. That night, they packed. Not everything, just what mattered. Tablets, cash, one duffel bag of essentials, a hard drive with names and financial records. Emma tucked her small notebook inside it. Daniel helped secure the bags. Nathan cried, but didn't ask why. Ryan just clung to his father's hand. They weren't running. Not exactly. They were heading to a man Marcus knew, a federal judge, an honest one, someone who owed Marcus more than a favor. They'd make their case, face it head on, but they had to get there first. And Victoria's reach was growing. By dawn, the mansion stood quiet, empty, but not abandoned. Marcus left the family photo behind, placed it on the mantel with one single rose. Let them come and find it. Let them guess what it meant. They drove out before the sun kissed the horizon. The highway that led south dipped low between office buildings before cutting eastward toward the Lincoln Tunnel crossing. Marcus Blackwood drove up front, eyes fixed ahead, the way a man does when looking back will only break him. Daniel rode beside him, pistol in the glove compartment, not because Marcus asked, but because the boy had chosen it. Emma rode with Nathan behind her in the SUV, both bundled tight, the boy resting his head against her shoulder. Ryan was with Marcus in the front seat, small arms wrapped tight around his stuffed animal. They weren't fast. They couldn't be. But they were steady, and for now, that was enough. Marcus didn't know what lay ahead. He didn't trust the system to listen. Not after what Victoria had stirred up in the Hamptons. But he did trust one man, Federal Judge Thomas Mitchell. Years ago, when Marcus had stood trial for corporate espionage charges in defense of his company, it was Thomas who'd seen through the accusations and understood the ethics behind the decisions. They weren't friends, not exactly. But Thomas had written him once. Said if ever the world turned sour again, Marcus knew where to find him. Somewhere near Philadelphia, 2 hours' drive. Now all Marcus had to do was get there before Victoria found another way to strike. By noon they had crossed into New Jersey, where skyscrapers gave way to suburbs and industrial complexes. The wind came down in gusts between the buildings like a warning. Marcus kept his hand near his holster. Not because he expected trouble here, but because he always expected it now. They made a rest stop that night at a chain hotel. The boys curled together, Emma standing her turn at watch without being asked. She didn't sleep much. Marcus noticed. Even when her eyes closed, her hands stayed on the knife under her jacket. When the parking lot lights dimmed, she shifted closer to Daniel. She's not going to stop, Emma said quietly. Marcus didn't answer. She wants them because they remind her she can win, she continued. Not because she loves them. Marcus looked over the hotel lamp at her. How do you know that? Because it's what my stepfather did, she said. After my mother died, he kept me around just to prove he wasn't the villain. Paraded me at school events like a trophy. Made me say nice things. But at home, her voice cracked. She stopped talking. Marcus didn't press. I'll speak to the judge, she added. Tell him what I saw. Marcus nodded. I'm not asking you to. You don't have to. In the morning, they checked out. And just past afternoon, while refueling at a gas station, they saw the first sign of pursuit. Tire tracks, fresh. 5 vehicles. Not following the highway, but cutting across service roads in a way that spoke of urgency. Marcus crouched beside the tracks, frowning. They're trying to get ahead of us, he muttered. How far? Daniel asked. Close, maybe hours. He rose and looked around. We can't outrun them. Not with the boys. So what do we do? Marcus looked down at Ryan, who stood staring at the highway with a hand on Emma's arm. We make them think we went another way. They doubled back. It cost them time, but it worked. By sundown, they'd left the main highway far behind and taken a narrow back road Marcus hadn't driven since his college days. One that curled west through industrial districts and led to an abandoned warehouse he remembered from a business deal long ago. It was still there, barely standing, half the windows broken, but solid enough for one night. Inside, the wind couldn't touch them. Marcus started a small camping stove, careful to keep the light low. Daniel pulled Ryan into his lap, rubbing warmth into his brother's fingers. Nathan passed around energy bars with stiff hands, but nobody complained. That night, as the stove burned low, Emma sat beside Marcus. "You think they'll find our trail?" "Maybe, but I don't think they're trackers." "They don't need to be," she said. "Victoria doesn't send smart men. She sends fast ones, loud ones." Marcus gave a tight smile. "Then we just need to be quieter." Outside, snow began to fall, soft like forgiveness. By morning, they were back on the road, angling now toward the eastern suburbs. But halfway through the industrial district, Daniel froze in his seat. He pointed. On the overpass above, a vehicle. Just one, watching. Too far to engage. Marcus raised a hand. The vehicle didn't move. Didn't flee, just stared, then turned and vanished behind the concrete. Was that one of them? Daniel asked. No doubt. Why didn't he try something? Marcus didn't answer. He just drove harder. They reached Philadelphia by dusk. But it wasn't what Marcus remembered. The old courthouse district had changed. Only 6 buildings stood as he recalled. The federal building renovated. The law offices long relocated. Only the courthouse still looked alive, its windows lit from within. A silver-haired man stood out front, coat pulled tight, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Thomas Mitchell. He recognized Marcus immediately. "Well," he said as Marcus stepped out with a weary grunt. "I figured it'd be one of 2 reasons you'd show your face again. You killed someone or you're about to." Marcus nodded once. "Neither yet." Thomas squinted past him at the children. "And they are? My sons. All 3. Yes. And her?" Marcus glanced at Emma. "A witness." Thomas didn't blink. "Well, then come inside." The courthouse wasn't fancy. Just one room with a bench, a desk, and legal volumes at the front. But it was warm, and it smelled like old leather and order. Marcus explained everything. He didn't embellish, didn't cry, just told it plain about Victoria, about the mansion, about the cold, the men, the knock on the glass. Emma stepped forward next. She said her piece with a trembling voice, but steady eyes. She spoke of the bruises she saw, the threats, the lies Victoria spun on her way through East Hampton. Thomas listened. When they finished, he poured 3 cups of coffee and leaned back. "Well," he said, "you've got 2 problems." Marcus waited. 1. Victoria's got a lawyer. That lawyer's got reach. There's a restraining order making the rounds that says she has temporary custody of the children pending hearing. That makes you a fugitive with minors. Marcus's jaw clenched. 2. That lawyer knows you came here. You've got no more than a day before federal marshals arrive with real warrants. So what do I do? Thomas looked at him, tired and certain. You stand trial in the open with the whole truth laid bare. That's suicide. That's the law. Marcus didn't move for a long time. Then he nodded. Then let's do it. Thomas stood. We'll convene tomorrow. You'll speak. Emma too. The boys, if it comes to it. You won't like it, but it'll be clean. Marcus rose. Thank you. Thomas stopped him. This doesn't end with words, Blackwood. This ends with proof. So if there's anything, messages, photos, neighbors who saw, dig it up tonight. Marcus nodded once more. But when he stepped out of the courthouse, he saw a figure waiting in the dark. Victoria, wrapped in a designer coat, her hair in perfect curls, standing under the light of the street lamp. She smiled sweetly. Evening, Marcus. He didn't speak. She stepped closer. Boys still alive? He stared. I only asked, she said, because by morning you won't be able to keep them. Marcus's hand twitched near his jacket, but he stopped himself. I told the judge, she said, leaning in. I told him about the drinking, about the violence, about the way they cried when you came home. All lies. All believable, she whispered. Especially from a widow. I buried my wife, he growled. And you're about to bury your freedom. Then she walked away. And for the first time since Marcus returned early from Silicon Valley, he felt something like fear. Because Victoria wasn't bluffing. She was playing a long game, and the next hand came at dawn. The courthouse filled before sunrise. Word had spread. The tech mogul wronged by the man who raised his sons with fists. The lost wife, the stepmother cast aside. Victoria played it well. Too well. By the time Marcus stepped inside, coat damp from morning mist and mind dulled by a night without rest, the air was thick with judgment. Federal Judge Thomas Mitchell sat like stone behind the bench, a gavel resting lightly in his hand. His eyes scanned the room, unreadable. Marcus didn't look at the crowd. He didn't need to. He felt them. Victoria stood in front, arms folded, coat pristine, lips set in quiet sorrow. Behind her, a man in an expensive suit rose, her lawyer, no doubt. His shoes barely had scuffs on them. His fingers were manicured. "Let the record show," he began, "that the petitioner, Mrs. Victoria Sterling, has come forth with evidence that the respondent, Marcus Blackwood, has subjected her and the children to physical and emotional harm, abandonment, and willful neglect. She seeks full custody of the children and the right to remove them to a safer, more stable home." Marcus didn't flinch, not even when the lawyer pulled out documents, waved them like gospel. Not even when Victoria's voice cracked as she spoke of long nights, of Marcus's supposed drinking, of boys huddled from terror, not cold. "I found them outside," she said, her voice trembling. "But it wasn't because I put them there. It was because they were hiding from him, from his temper, from what he becomes when he's angry." She wiped a tear that didn't fall. Emma gripped the bench so tightly her knuckles turned white. Thomas nodded slowly. "Marcus Blackwood, your response." Marcus rose. His shoes echoed on the wood floor. He walked to the center, turned to face the judge. "Only the judge. My name is Marcus Blackwood. I've raised Daniel, Nathan, and Ryan since the day their mother died in childbirth with the youngest. I've kept them fed, kept them safe. I taught them how to work and how to dream. I don't drink. I don't raise my voice unless danger is close. And I've never, not once, laid a hand on my boys in anger." The silence was thick. "She locked them out," he said. "I came home early and found them frozen on the steps. Ryan's shoes were soaked through. Daniel didn't cry. He didn't even speak because he thought that was normal. That's what she did to them when I was gone." A murmur stirred through the crowd. Victoria's lawyer stood. "That's a bold claim, Your Honor." "I've got witness testimony," Marcus said. Emma saw it. She was there. Thomas gestured. "Bring her forward." Emma walked slow, not from fear, but from caution. Her face was pale, but her eyes stayed sharp. She told them about the night, about the men Victoria sent, about the message left in the email, the knock on the glass, the blood on the marble. She called the boys animals, Emma said. Said they were feral, that their father was too stupid to know how to raise them, that they needed someone who could break them right. She paused. "I know what that means." Thomas frowned. "You do?" "Yes," she whispered, "because that's what my stepfather used to say." Emma turned to the room then, really turned. "I didn't come with Marcus Blackwood because I was scared. I came because I was safe." Victoria's face darkened, but she said nothing. Marcus stepped forward again. "Your Honor, I'm not asking to win. I'm asking to be heard. Let the boys speak if you won't take it from me." Thomas looked toward the bench where the children sat. Daniel sat straight, face unreadable. Nathan leaned against him, nervous. Ryan toyed with the zipper of his jacket. "Do you wish to speak?" Thomas asked. Daniel stood. He walked to the front, shoes scuffing the floor, hands shaking. "Mom died when I was 6, he said. "Dad never cried in front of us, but I heard him in the garage one night. He ain't weak. He's just tired. He works from sunrise to sunset, and he eats less, so we have more." He glanced at Victoria. "She used to make us stay outside until it was dark. Said we were too loud. Sometimes when Dad was gone, she wouldn't cook. We ate cereal for dinner. Once Ryan got sick, and she said he was faking it. Told him to sleep on the porch." He looked back at the judge. "We want to stay with him." That was all. No flourish. No tears, just truth. Thomas closed his eyes for a long moment, then turned to Victoria. "Do you have anything to say in response?" Victoria's face tightened. "Children lie," she said simply, "especially when coached." Thomas's gavel came down once. "Enough." The room went still. "I will render judgment after recess," Thomas said. "Clear the room. I want quiet." Marcus didn't move. Neither did Victoria. The judge stepped down and disappeared into his chambers. Outside, people whispered. Some glared. Others looked confused. Emma stayed beside the boys. Marcus sat on the courthouse steps, eyes fixed on nothing. Minutes passed like hours. When the door opened again, Judge Thomas looked older, more tired. He stepped up slowly, took his seat, and said, "Mr. Blackwood, you retain custody of your sons permanently." The words didn't register at first. Victoria stood. "What?" Thomas raised a hand. "You endangered minors, Mrs. Sterling. You falsified documents. You hired men to harm and intimidate. You're lucky I don't recommend prosecution." Victoria's face turned to stone. "This isn't over," she hissed. "No," Marcus said, rising. "It never was." He stepped forward, eyes locked with hers. "You made a home feel like a prison. You made them afraid to speak. But not anymore." She stepped back. "Take your lies and go," he said, "and don't come back." Victoria stormed out, her lawyer chasing after. The room cleared, but Thomas stayed behind. He stepped down, met Marcus at the center. "You'll be watched," the judge said quietly. "Any misstep and she'll pounce again." "I understand." "And the girl?" Marcus looked toward Emma. "She stays as long as she wants." Thomas nodded once. "You've got a long road ahead, Blackwood, but you held your ground." Outside, the sky opened, not with rain, but light. Sunlight for the first time in days. Marcus stepped onto the courthouse steps and looked at his sons. They smiled, not wide, not foolish, but real. Emma stood beside them. And for the first time, Marcus Blackwood felt something deep in his chest finally settle. Peace. But peace doesn't last long in the corporate world. Not when there's one last card left unplayed. Because as they walked toward the SUV, a man stepped out from the parking garage, one of the hired operatives from the mansion, the nervous one. And in his hand, a federal badge. "Sorry, Blackwood," he said. "Judge don't run this district anymore." Behind him, 3 more men stepped into the street. Guns drawn. The street was too quiet. Not the hush of peace, but the breathless pause before something terrible. Marcus Blackwood didn't move. Not when the nervous man flashed the badge, faintly worn, slightly bent, likely bought or borrowed from someone who'd long since stopped enforcing anything. Not when the 3 men stepped in behind him, eyes narrow, guns loose in their hands like they'd been waiting for this moment since dawn. Emma gripped Ryan's arm and stepped in front of the boy. Nathan instinctively shrank behind Daniel, whose hand hovered near the knife on his belt. But Marcus gave one small shake of his head. Not yet. The nervous one's name was Hayes, if Marcus remembered. Smiled like a man who knew the law was just a costume, and today he got to wear it. "You're under arrest," he said, mock formality dripping from every word. "Charges of obstruction, kidnapping, and attempted murder." Marcus said nothing. "You going to come quiet," Hayes continued, "or you want the boys to watch their father bleed on the asphalt?" Thomas Mitchell stepped onto the courthouse steps then, coat flapping behind him like a judge's robe. "You don't have jurisdiction here, Hayes." "I do now," the man said, holding out a folded document. "Signed by Federal Marshal Davidson. You remember Davidson, don't you, Judge? The man you cost a promotion 3 years ago." Thomas didn't take the paper. "Davidson is not fit to run security at a shopping mall, let alone sign over authority." "Well, good news is," Hayes said, "you don't have to like it. You just got to step aside." Thomas didn't move. Neither did Marcus. "I'll give you one more chance," Hayes said, cocking his head. "Turn around, walk inside, and let the system chew on you proper, or we end it here." Marcus finally spoke. "Judge already ruled." Hayes smiled wider. "Then we'll appeal with bullets." That's when Marcus heard the second set of footsteps behind. Fast, urgent. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see 2 more men flanking the parking garage near the street, assault rifles in hand, steps light. They were closing in. This wasn't a bluff. It was a setup. Victoria had always known she couldn't beat Marcus with words or win the boys with truth, but she could outnumber him. She could buy people, whisper lies into tired ears until even justice bent sideways. Marcus took 1 step forward. Behind him, Emma whispered to Daniel, low and tight, "Get ready." Daniel didn't blink, didn't ask. He just shifted his weight slightly. Then Hayes made a mistake. He raised his gun, not toward Marcus, but toward Thomas. "You going to move, old man?" Marcus didn't give him time to fire. The shot came fast and low, right through the folds of Marcus's jacket. Hayes stumbled back, clutching his thigh, same spot Marcus had hit the last man sent after him. Another shot rang out. Thomas this time, surprisingly fast for an old judge. And one of the garage men dropped his rifle with a yelp. Emma screamed, but not in fear. It was a signal. Daniel lunged sideways, tackling Ryan to the ground as bullets flew overhead. Nathan ducked under the SUV. Emma grabbed the dropped rifle and fired once, missing wide, but sending one of the men scrambling for cover. Marcus dropped to one knee, firing again. The third man from the garage went down hard, groaning and clawing at his vest. Only one remained upright, the slouched man with the dead eyes who hadn't fired yet. He stepped forward calmly, raising his gun with the slow precision of someone who didn't believe in rushing. Marcus turned to face him, but the man didn't shoot. He just said, "She promised Bitcoin." Marcus kept his sight steady. "She lies." "I figured," the man said. "Still took the crypto, but I ain't going to die for her." He lowered the gun, turned, and walked away. No one followed. The dust settled. Only groans remained. Thomas moved to Hayes, kicked the gun from his twitching fingers. "You boys never did learn the law was more than paper," the judge muttered. "It's people, and today the people didn't flinch." Marcus holstered his weapon, turned to his sons. "Everyone all right?" Ryan nodded first, face pale, but brave. Nathan ran to him, wrapped his arms around his father's waist without a word. Emma stood over the rifle, chest heaving. Daniel had a scratch on his temple, blood tracing a thin line near his brow. But his eyes were fierce, like a man who'd crossed something invisible and couldn't go back. Thomas looked at the bodies. "Davidson will send more." "I know," Marcus said, "but not today." "You still want to stay in the district?" Marcus shook his head. "I want to stay free." Emma spoke next. "Where will we go?" Marcus looked at her, then at the three boys watching him, breathing as one, their hearts tangled up in his whether they knew it or not. "Wherever they can't follow," he said. "Where no one needs permission to be let in." Thomas nodded once. "I'll file what I can. Make it look legal. You'll have a day, maybe two." "Thank you," Marcus said. "I didn't do it for you," Thomas replied. "I did it for them." Marcus didn't argue. They drove out that afternoon with energy bars in their bags and fire still on their heels. Victoria had vanished again. No trace, no word, no tears. Just silence like a threat that hadn't found the right place to explode yet. But Marcus didn't look back. They drove past the edge of Philadelphia, through suburbs just beginning to bloom with spring, and into the valley beyond. The road wasn't easy. It would never be, but it was theirs. At a rest stop that night, the stars stretched clear above them. Daniel helped Ryan set up a tablet with games. Nathan counted their cash like it was treasure. Emma stood at the edge of the parking lot lights, not watching for threats this time, but for peace. And Marcus sat on a picnic table, typing. He wasn't coding anything in particular, just organizing files into something cleaner, like maybe if he did it enough, the world would follow. Then Emma sat beside him. "They're lucky," she said. Marcus looked up. "Who?" "The boys. You think they'll believe that one day?" Emma nodded. "I do. Even after everything." She looked at him, not smiling, just steady. "Especially after everything." The wind whispered through the trees. No engines, no shouts, just the sound of children sleeping, a tablet glowing, and a man who refused to stop fighting for what mattered most. Family. Dawn came quiet. No helicopter beats, no voices, no echo of gunfire. Just a pale sky cracking open above the mountains, painting the frost silver across the grass. Marcus Blackwood stirred from where he'd slept with his back against the SUV, his pistol resting across his lap, his neck sore from the angle, but he didn't complain. He looked at his sons, still curled beneath the hotel blankets Emma had wrapped around them in the night. The kind of sleep that came only when a child felt safe, even if the world said otherwise. He watched them for a long moment, then reached for the thermos resting on the hood and poured the last of the black coffee into his travel mug. Emma emerged from the restroom building, her jacket wet with dew, her knife still tucked in her belt. "Nothing out there," she said, brushing her hair back. "No vehicles, no sign." Marcus nodded. "Then we keep moving." They had no set destination, only direction. Southwest, toward a mountain town Marcus remembered from a tech conference long past. One that split into lesser-traveled valleys where estates still stood quiet and spread out like forgotten dreams. He wasn't searching for a city. Not anymore. He wasn't chasing a new beginning either. He was just moving far enough to keep his children out of reach. By midday, the mountains began to rise again. Not steep, but steady hills rolling into something wilder. Emma rode behind Nathan now, giving Daniel a chance to navigate with Marcus. The boy didn't say much, but the way he checked the GPS told Marcus what words couldn't. Daniel had grown, not just taller, but deeper. You couldn't go through what they'd been through and stay soft. Marcus felt it, too. The shift. He didn't wake up thinking of Victoria anymore. He didn't hold anger in his chest like a coal. Not because she hadn't deserved it, but because that anger took up space where something better might finally grow. They crested a mountain pass near evening and looked down at a shallow valley nestled with 3 scattered houses. No lights, no movement, just driveways cracking and roofs partially weathered. But the stream at the center still glimmered, and the land around it was flat and wide. "That looks like home," Daniel said quietly. Marcus didn't answer, but they drove down. The first house had half its deck collapsed and ivy growing along the stone chimney. Marcus parked, handed his keys to Nathan, and pushed the door open with his shoulder. Dust rose in clouds, but the floor held. The walls stood straight. He walked through slowly, his shoes stirring dry leaves and broken glass. A kitchen island remained along one wall, its edges carved with initials long weathered away. A small fireplace, cracked but still usable, sat under a window that framed the stream below. It wasn't much, but it was enough. By sundown, they had unpacked what little they owned. Emma found a hidden loft above the rafters, dry and warm. The boys dragged in fallen branches for a fire. Marcus hammered a loose door back into place and patched a window with cardboard. They worked like they belonged there. And maybe they did. Maybe the world had finally allowed it. That night, they ate instant noodles and energy bars in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because some moments don't need words. Ryan fell asleep first, tucked against Marcus's side. Nathan was next, curled with a jacket over his head. Emma helped Daniel stoke the fire, then sat back near the door, eyes still scanning the dark, still half expecting Victoria to appear in the trees or one of her hired men to kick down the frame. But nothing came. Only wind, only quiet. "I still don't know how to believe it," Emma whispered. Marcus looked at her. "Believe what?" "That we're not being hunted anymore." Marcus didn't lie to her. "Maybe we still are. Maybe not by guns, but by memories, by fear. It takes longer to outrun those." Emma nodded. "But this helps." He agreed. The next days passed in simple rhythms. The boys mended a fence which would scavenge from the other houses. Emma helped Daniel build a small shelf for Ryan's toy cars. They cooked together. They argued over seasoning and sleeping arrangements and how to clean out the chimney without getting ash in the soup pot. It was ordinary and somehow sacred. Each morning, Marcus rose before the sun and checked the driveway, walked the stream, counted their supplies, not because he expected war, but because men like him never stopped preparing for one. On the 5th day, a car came. One alone, no badges. Marcus saw it from the ridge, windows tinted, engine quiet, headlights off. He waited. The driver stopped just outside the property line and rolled down a window. From inside, a letter appeared. "From Philadelphia," the driver said. "From Thomas." Marcus stepped down, took the letter, nodded once. The driver turned and left without a word. Inside, he opened the paper. "Marcus, court stands as ruled. The marshal's authority in the matter has been suspended. Victoria has left the country. She has no claim. You are free. I suggest you make peace with it, hard as that may be. Not everyone gets this kind of ending. Don't waste it. Thomas." Marcus stared at the words for a long while. "Free." He read it again. "Free." Then folded the paper and placed it in the fire. He didn't need to keep it. Not anymore. That evening, he sat on the deck while Daniel strummed a guitar he'd found in one of the abandoned houses. Emma braided Ryan's hair just to make him laugh. Nathan read from an old magazine they'd found in the broken house nearby. Half the pages gone, but still stories all the same. And Marcus just listened to the creak of wood beneath him, to laughter that didn't carry fear, to the sound of something healing. Home wasn't a place you built with money. It was something you earned through fire. Victoria would vanish into some distant penthouse or country club, spinning her tales into new circles. She might try again one day, or maybe not, but she couldn't undo what had happened here. The boys had seen truth, and truth had stayed. Weeks turned into months. Spring crept into the valley with shy blossoms and warmer air. Marcus found himself smiling more, laughing even. Ryan began asking for stories every night before bed. Nathan took to sketching the world around him. Emma carved her own initials into the loft beam just beside the ones she found faded and old, because she belonged here now, too. And Daniel became his father's shadow, not because he had to, because he wanted to. One day, while helping repair the roof, Daniel looked over the valley and said, "Do you think Mom would have liked this place?" Marcus didn't speak at first. Then he said, "I think she would have felt proud." Daniel nodded. "Of us." "Of you," Marcus said. "And maybe a little of me." They sat in silence. Then Daniel asked, "You ever going to get married again?" Marcus chuckled once. "You trying to push me out already?" "No," Daniel said. "Just wondering." Marcus looked down at the house, smoke curling soft from the chimney, the sound of Emma singing to Ryan faint on the breeze. He thought of Victoria's lies, of guns in the rain, of courtroom truths, and the weight of stepping forward when everything tried to push you down. And then he looked at the boys, his boys, and he said, "I already have everything I need." The sun dipped low, lighting the mountains with fire. They stayed on the roof until it set, together, not because they had nowhere else to go, but because at last they didn't have to go anywhere at all.